Hi, welcome to Albuquerque's Iconic Businesses presented by Moji Cinema. My name is Stacy Sacco. I've taught entrepreneurial studies at UNM and headed up the UNM Small Business Institute the last 20 years, and I'm currently a site mentor at the UNM Rainforest downtown. We're excited to meet Chris Baca today and talk about Yes Housing and business practices. And before we get started with that, we're gonna show you the origin story of Yes Housing, and then we'll come back and have a chat with Chris about some of the business practices they have at Yes Housing. So look forward to meeting you again.
I was born in 1949 in the South Valley. It's a little community called Armijo. And what I found in that, even though people were poor there was so much cohesiveness and that most of us did okay. And then when I started working in the field of social services, I found that that neighborhood wasn't the worst neighborhood there was. I could see that there was more opportunity than I realized, and there was a greater gap in between than I had ever imagined. And when I saw that, I says, something needs to be done. And someone has to do it. And I figured, hey, I've gotten these opportunities for a reason. Why am I not doing something about it? I had worked my way through college as a tutor counselor for a program that recruited kids from impoverished neighborhoods. Getting out of college, getting out of graduate school, I said, well, what am I going to do? And I was more drawn with what kids were doing in the neighborhood. And so we founded a program called YDI, Youth Development Incorporated. And I could see that there was a significant piece in my puzzle that was missing. And that piece being, why can't we change the whole community? We have to change the whole community in order to have the kind of impact that we're looking. And the only way we can do that is if we're able to really ramp up what we're doing. That's what really got me to thinking differently and thinking outside the box. And YES stands for Youth Enterprises Systems. That's what we were going to, Youth Enterprises. There was a bridge that I had to build between Yes Housing and YDI. YDI had become very large and very omniscient in the youth services arena, so people wanted me just to concentrate on that. But I knew that was the piece that was missing. I said, I have to devote a significant amount of time to doing this other part, because otherwise, any work that I have done here at YDI, I will have missed an opportunity to do what needs to be done. And so there was that period where I had to focus as I could on YDI, which demanded a lot of my time, and yet find time to begin to build this other organization. And it was difficult because I had to do two for a long, long time. Came to that point, I says, I've been here 41 years, it's time for me to focus in on the last part of my professional career. Said I have to do it because I felt within my soul, that was what I was called to do. This was my calling in life. We had to really learn how to be resourceful and look for sources of revenues where we could fix up places and make them more energy efficient. We started seeking out where are there pots of money that we can leverage to improve the whole facility. And then we figured out really the only way to get what we dream of building is by building from the ground up. So we said the next step is how do we build it so that it's new from the beginning and we know how it was built. For us to build a project, you need streets and you need water and you need sewer. You need amenities nearby. You can't build out in the desert. So it's got to be within some defined area where there's some services there. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that's everything that we confront. How do you find enough money to build something new from the ground up? Because we're not grant supported. It's really a tough environment. It's more so now than ever.
As a developer, because we do face a lot of challenges when it comes to financing these developments and the operating costs for the long haul, we try to build a product that will last for the long haul. We oftentimes are doing our best to be proactive, to try to address those things before they happen. And each day is a new challenge, and there's always something new to figure out.
The biggest challenges now is just the cost of development. We bid a project at X amount, and by the time we get ready to get awarded it's gone up 25-30%. And so you have to fill those gaps and are constantly trying to get projects completed because of the fact that they're so costly nowadays. And you have the demand. I mean, every apartment we've done recently, as soon as we build it, it's full. There's such a need, and we can't build them quick enough.
Yes, housing developments in general are just really focused on who the end user is going to be. So we're always trying to think of who's going to be moving in there, who's going to be benefiting from what we're trying to do, what we experience at every single turn, what we can do to bring that knowledge forward and do it better the next time.
We don't really target whether it's a family property or if it's a senior, disabled, or a homeless property. It's more about what the community, the land, the apartment complex, the development that comes into our realm, and what's going to fit in that particular neighborhood.
When we get awarded a contract, they know we're going to do it. And so they know now that when Yes Housing puts its name on something, it's going to get done. And we have a proven track record. Wherever we've gone, the projects we've done, we've completed them.
We wanted to build an organization that was very warm and accepting and recognize them as individuals, not just as cogs in a wheel. What you have to find is people with heart. Finding the people that have the heart, have the passion, the persistence, and the abilities to actually get the work done is really the secret. Finding the kind of people that just don't give up, because you got to push through in order to make it work.
We know that every person in this organization, from the accounting department to the development folks to the construction manager that's on board now, we all have to work together because it's a puzzle and every piece has to be interconnected so that it paints the right picture. And that's the culture that we've developed, is that we know that every person in this organization is equally important, and we respect one another for that, and we communicate well, and we appreciate each other's work because we know that their work impacts our work. And so I think that's what's key, is that we all know that we are making a difference together.
Here in the Albuquerque area, we have a lot of collaborative resources, a lot of commodity and food sources, transportation, healthcare, mental health services, clothing, and it's also tied to what a resident needs. So as a service provider, we don't come into a low-income community and say, this is what you need. Services will be completely dependent and directed based on what people want.
A couple years ago, I thought I had to move, and I didn't know where I was going. And I heard about Yes Housing, and the door was opened up for me. I was safe. I had a home, people that treated me with dignity. I didn't have to live in the car. I feel like I came home. I'm safe.
The happy days are when you get to see people move in. Just any time that you can see the impact that way, whether it's getting the ability to move forward, closing on a deal, and starting construction. I get happy every time I see a foundation being poured, because from there we're ground up, we get to see the building moving, and that's just so much fun.
Seeing the smiles on the faces of the people when you see that they're living in a nice place. But it's not just a living environment, it's also the social service programs that we provide downtown at Imperial, our community garden. So when you see all that and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool, we did that. You know, we gave them a safe and happy place to live. And it's like, okay, we did our job. We did what we were meant to do, which is building a better community. And that's what we're here for.
There's a great need within our community, and we definitely don't have enough affordable housing. People really need a safe, decent place that they can call home at the end of the day, and being able to provide that to someone else, it drives me, because everybody deserves to have that foundation if they want it. I want to do everything that I can to provide that opportunity to them.
When you first see somebody move into a beautiful place, you see the light come into their eyes. You see their children get all excited. Oh, I have my own bedroom. Oh, I can go downstairs and play in the playground. That's a big deal. providing them something they really, really need. So housing is the basic part of it. Our work is significant in terms of what is happening, particularly now. We know that demand for housing is at an all-time high. This is really the challenge that America is facing right now. The demand for housing that is quality and affordable, that dream is becoming more difficult every day. And for me, I look at young people and I'm thinking at what kind of life are we leaving for them? That's not where we want our community, our state, our nation to be. We got to do this.
So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. It was very exciting to hear about Yes Housing and how you guys got started. Since you're here and you're the CEO and president of Yes Housing, and I thought I would ask some questions about not just the origins, but your daily business practices now. What's the day in the life of Chris Buck as the president of Yes Housing? What do you do to keep it all organized and keep yourself organized?
Well, one of the main things is in any organization is to have the right people in the right positions, right? So we've been around 32 years and we've fostered a kind of environment where the individuals feel like they're part of something bigger and they're appreciated for who they are, what their talents are. And my thing every day is to make sure I let folks know how much I appreciate them. Because without their passion and commitment, there is no Yes Housing. You can't have a workforce that's not motivated. You can't have a workforce that doesn't believe in, that don't feel that they're believed in. So emphasizing my personal commitment to them to give them the best work environment that we possibly can is what I do. So I do a little round around the building and say, hi, how are you doing?
You sound like the kind of guy I'd like to work for.
Yeah, well, that's
exactly.
the whole point. The whole point and is to make sure that people are okay. As human beings, we go through all kinds of things in our life, and it impacts who we are at work, right? You can't just drop a curtain on what your life has happened up to the moment you show up at work, and it doesn't impact you, right? It does. And I usually say I'm just looking at a person's eyes to see what your eyes are the windows to your soul, right? And I can tell if somebody's tired or somebody's stressed or somebody's kind of zoned out. And I try to connect and just let them know I'm here. I'm here. I'm happy you're here. We're gonna have a good day today. We've got lots of stuff on our plate. That's really how I start my day.
So I read quite a bit about Yes Housing. You're a nonprofit, but It sounds like you had a lot of experience in the business side of your career too.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the business side of Yes Housing. How many staff do you have total, or how many employees? And I noticed that you have, my goodness, about 10 operations around Arizona and Albuquerque or New Mexico.
It's more like 20.
Yeah, I was going to say. And how do you keep all that in line? What kind of an organization do you create?
Well, basically we have a core staff. We have a business development, asset management pieces. Of course, all the back operations, HR, and the financial aspects of it. That's basically an organization. Any organization should be structured that along those lines. But really, what we are at our core are developers. We're not grant-driven organization, because for 41 years I headed up a rather large nonprofit that was very grant-driven, and it's a very painful experience. You said you worked over at West, and you know how that works. You're always on somebody's hit list, either you're doing well or not, and your strings are being pulled. Yes, we decided we wanted to take it our existence into our own hands. And that meant that we had to produce what we felt was really greatly needed, and it's no more demonstrated than today how critical housing is. And we wanted to do housing because we felt at the very core of any community is where people live. Unless we can build communities that are habitable, beautiful, accommodating, secure, I think we as a society, and we see it already, how unstable it makes the whole of society. So that's where we wanted to go. And what we knew about that was nothing. We basically knew nothing about development. I did not know that myself. And I said, this is something we have to do, because at the other nonprofit, it was really dealing with the individual on a one-to-one basis and trying to get them to a place where they were in a better place mentally. But then after we did that, we asked ourselves, well, where do they go now? And they would go back into the community they came from. They'd go back into that unstable environment. They went back into that environment that forced them to do things that they did not want to do. Right. And I said, we got to change that. And so that's why we went into that kind of effort. And I said, but I don't want it to be grant driven. I can't deal with that any longer because it's too many bosses, too many. I was going to say, cooks. You've
got a lot of bosses.
There's a lot of bosses involved in that. And I said, I'd rather
chasing assessments and objectives and
and always changing. Always being this blob. To kind of make yourself into so you could get the next grant. That's not who we are at core, and our core is human beings. I think that makes you. It's a false front you have to put on.
So the other thing is that you're involved with development and building housing. I was just curious, to a certain degree, that's sort of like build it and they will come. I can see where you build it and people pay attention and then they see it as an alternative place for them to live or better place for them to live. How else do you market Yes Housing to get the word out? That's a big aspect of most businesses or organization, is getting the awareness in the community, as well as then all the other things you need to line up, which is sponsors and volunteers and members and clients in a sense. So how do you market? Do you use social media much?
We use it a lot, as a matter of fact. But before we did that, consciously we flew under the radar for a long time. People didn't know who Yes Housing was, and we didn't want them to. And the reason why is because we didn't know who the hell we were.
Oh.
Yeah. It'd be good for you to know what the hell you're doing
right.
before you start marketing yourself, right? So we wanted to make sure that we did a few projects, got them right, got the right people in the right positions, and said, okay, now we're ready to say, this is who we are. Because you always want to show the best you that you can. And if you're not there, don't put your face out there. Because you're going to disappoint whomever your client is, and certainly yourself, because you're not ready. So we made real sure, and it took us at least a decade, if not more, to get there. And it was really tinkering with our model, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Is this the right person for that position? Some people bounce right away. Some people you got to bounce. And then finding all the key folks. We have a core staff, and it's not large. It's probably 25, 30 people, but the average tenure is about 15 years.
That's a story right there.
That's a story right there.
Because retention is tough.
Retention is, in this field, and especially development, they could pick off any one of our folks, and these folks could go into a very nice job that paid a lot more, but probably they would not have the same environment that they have at Yes Housing, because we are so focused on the individual and their well-being. In other places, it's like they're churning people out. They chew them up and spit them out, because the end goal is this other thing, and it's not people, it's not their workers. That's a product. How can you actually create a great product if you're just chewing people up and spitting them out? That's never made any sense to me. Just
I've worked
sense.
at some of those.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. You've worked at some of those places, and they're
corporates.
always doing a 360 on you, the 360 eval, and you're in the middle, and everybody's shooting at you, and that's supposed to make you be a better person.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing is that you probably have a formula for how you've identified people to work for you or let them know about what you're doing, but then also brought them on board. What's your onboarding look like? Or how do you get them aligned with what the mission is or the why of the business?
The why is, where we're at right now is that lots of folks want to come to work for us. You know, that having established ourselves and having established a reputation, that's a great place to work. We don't have to go out knocking on a whole lot of doors. People come out looking to us, and they're coming from big entities that they're developers or they're the state agency or they've done, that's their profession, and they've left and they said, that's not where I want to be. I want to be a place like Yes, I hear Yes Housing is. And so we attract a lot of folks that way. We do go through a process of trying to find the right people, and it's really sitting down with people and talking. Just general, it's not grilling them with a bunch of questions, right? It's like, who is this person? You know, how do they come across? What's their sense of purpose, of mission? How do they come across with integrity and honesty and commitment and warmth and all of those things that we desire in people, right? It's relational. And that's what we look for. Because you can find people with all kinds of skill sets, right? And you can get people with resumes this long, right? And they say, boy, these people have bounced around a lot. I wonder what's wrong with that one, you know?
Right.
You want to see somebody that's been a little bit consistent
Right.
in their career because you know that, you know, they're not just bouncing. And it's really, you don't build a team by being paramedical and there's a guy at the top and then you come down and, you know, and we're at the bottom. Who feels good about that? And nobody feels good about that, right? It's like we're all in this thing together. You know, I have an oar, and this is the one I use. So here's yours. And if we feel, if we have that sense of purpose, and we're quote, you know, going along with the analogy is rowing in the same direction, then you got something going.
I just gave a presentation to the Sandoval County Leadership Sandoval County, and we talked about lessons in leadership. So some of the examples were Abraham Lincoln in Washington, and Washington said, pursue the activity and get the work done. It's not about the prize, which was interesting because a lot of times people get focused on, I'm going to make more money or I'm going to get something done, but it was about getting the work done. And I thought it'd be interesting to hear from you about what leader have you met that you try to emulate or that you inspire, that inspired you along the way? Anybody that you can think of?
Yeah, my father.
Oh, okay. Tell
My
us about
father,
that,
you know,
yeah.
and he built a house out of scrap, you know, because that's all he had. He had used materials that he picked up at job sites, brick,
What a
lumber,
story. Oh, my
adobe,
goodness,
all
right.
of that. And he built it almost 80 years ago. Just out of curiosity of something I was doing, I went back and plugged in my old address. That house is still standing.
Oh, you went on,
80 years later.
went on
still
Google Maps or something?
Yes, I went to Google
It was
Maps.
there?
Yeah, it was there.
That's great.
And I remember the last piece that he added to that house was a piece that he had. He always had 3 jobs. He had to have 3 jobs to feed 13 people. So we went to this job site, and his job was to demo it. And of course, all the sons were labor. I was labor. And he was standing back, and while he's telling my brothers to take this off and pull this off and all that, he was standing back and says, well, my dad's not doing anything. You know, he was actually studying the building. And he found a portion of it that he said, I can detach this portion whole, brace it, load it on a truck, truck it across the river, take it to my house and attach it. And that was the last piece he added to our house before he passed. And I was really curious, is that piece still on that? Because I didn't think it was going to work.
Right.
Because my job was sitting in the back of this truck, make sure it didn't fall off, right? He trucking it down the South Valley in this thing. And that thing's still standing. 80 years later, and I said, there was no better builder than anybody I know, and we've done a lot of work with construction companies than my dad, because it's made out of adobe, it's made out of brick, recycled lumber, and then this whole piece that he took off this building. And I said, that's my model. If I can make things work out of bits and pieces like my dad did, and it's still standing 80 years later, I've done something.
I would always ask this of my guest speakers in my classes. If there was a time machine next door here at Moji Cinema and we could take you back to when you were 21 as the age of my students, what lessons might you tell yourself to look forward to, or things to look forward to, or lessons that you should be, or challenges you should be aware of you're going to face that would be helpful to them to better understand how to develop their careers and develop their own businesses?
I would say, going back to that age, I would think bigger than what I was thinking. I was thinking pretty small. Right. I was thinking, I want to get a job, I want to get paid this, and then I want to retire. I planned out my whole life on kind of a little box. And I was thinking in that box for the longest of time. And I was wondering, why aren't I advancing? Well, I built myself into a little box. Step back, really survey the whole of what exists. In a university is a perfect place to do it, right? You have all the disciplines there. Right. Do not just focus on one like I did, like business and economics, and I want to get out of here. I wish I would have taken history and geography and music and art and everything that I could actually. You have this buffet, and you're eating from the salad, one part of the salad bar, sample the whole buffet before you actually decide what you're going to do. Right. Don't put yourself in this little box.
That's a great lesson to share. So Chris, thank you for coming in today, and appreciate Moji Cinema and what they're doing to make iconic businesses a example for all of us to see and follow, and make our community better. And you're doing that every day. So delighted to meet you.
Thank you. I appreciate you very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.